So welcome to today's video, and in today's video we will go over 1.3 factorizing. Let's go. Okay, so in this question we have this expression right here. We have 3x plus 9 and we need to factorize this. So what is factorizing? Well, it is the opposite of what we did last lesson. So last lesson we were expanding the brackets. Now with factorizing we need to put this in brackets. So we need to simplify it down by putting it in brackets. So what does that mean? Well, if we look at this question here, we have 3x plus 9, okay? What we want to do is we want to find the highest common factors, with the highest common factor, which goes into 3x and goes into 9. So in this example, that is 3, okay? And then if we just open the brackets, now, well, how do we get from 3 to 3x? That's just times by x. And how do we get to 3 to 9? It's just same as saying, 9 divided by 3. So then we'd have a positive 3. And that would be that question done. We have now factorized 3x plus 9. It is 3, then open bracket x plus 3. Okay? Okay, so this question, we now have 9x squared y plus 15xy squared, and we need to factorize it, okay? So how do we do this question? Again, we think about the highest common factors which go into both of these numbers. So one of the factors, if we look at 9 and 15, then the highest common factor would be 3, okay? And also we got to look at the x and the y's too. That is also important. So we see that x goes into both, so we'd have x. Also y goes into both, so we would have y. And now we can open the brackets and we can write what we need to write in there. So if we're 3xy outside the brackets, then what can get us to the 9x squared y? So we know that it's 9 divided by 3, which will give us a 3 here. X squared divided by x, that's just an x. And well, y divided by y, obviously the y's would just cancel, so it would just be 1. So we don't need to put anything there for the y. Okay, and now we look at the 15xy squared. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. X divided by x is just 1, so we can just leave it. And then y squared divided by y is y, so that would be a 5y. And then that would be this question factorized. And if you want to understand more about this, then if you go ahead and you expand the brackets, you should end up with 9x squared y plus 15xy squared. So it's just the reverse, okay? So for this question, we have x squared minus 5x minus 6, and we need to factorize this. So this is a quadratic equation. So there are multiple ways you could work this out. You could use the quadratic formula. You could complete the square. Those will be in future videos, which I will do. But for this question, the way I would do it is if you have a quadratic equation like this, then what you can do is you can think of two numbers which can sum to make minus 5 and can multiply to make minus 6. So those two numbers would be minus 6 and a positive 1. Therefore, that would just simply go into x minus 6, x plus 1. Okay, there are multiple ways. The easiest way is just think of the two numbers which can multiply to make minus 5 and can multiply to make minus 6, but sum to make minus 5. So for this question, we have x squared minus 25. So for this type of question, this is still a quadratic equation, but there's a little trick to this question. If you see something like this, where you have x squared minus a square number, then what you can do is you can use a difference of two squares. This is a difference of two squares, and because of that, we can actually write it like this: x plus 5, x minus 5. So because it's a square number, and because we just have the x squared minus, then what ends up happening is if I was to work this out, we would get x squared, we would get minus a 5x plus a 5x minus 25, and then the 5x there would just cancel out with each other. So we're left with x squared minus 25. Now, why does this work? Well, it works purely because we have the x squared, okay? So we know that we're going to have x in one bracket and then x in the other bracket. And because we have a square number here, 25, therefore we know that it has to be, in this case, 5 times 5. We have to have 5 and 5 as well. And because it's a negative, we know that one of those will be a positive 5, the other will be a negative 5. And if you have the same numbers, one's a positive, one's a negative, then that will cancel out the x values. And this works for all of the square numbers as well. If we do, like, let's say we do x squared minus 81, for example, then it will be the same thing. It will just be x plus 9, x minus 9, okay? So this is called a difference of two squares. You should just be mindful of that. When you see something like that, an x squared minus a square number, you can just use this method to work it out. Okay, so we can also have something like this as well. So we have 4x squared minus 9y squared. And at first, this may look a bit weird because 4 and 9, there's no factor between them. And same with x squared and y squared. However, if you look at this question again, this is similar to the question we just did, a difference of two squares. Both 4 and 9 are both square numbers, so we can use a difference of two squares method to work it out. So because they're both square numbers, the square root of 4 is 2. So we know we have 2 there. And because it's 4x squared, we know that, okay, it's going to be 2x times 2x. So we know we're going to have a 2x here. And then with the 9y squared, again, that would be the square root of 9 is 3. So it would be a 3y here. And then our second brackets would just be the same, just change the sign. So we'll be left with this, 2x plus y, and then would have 2x minus 3y. Okay, so we have x cubed minus 7x squared plus 6x, and we need to factorize this completely. So the way you do this is, right now it looks a bit confusing. We haven't really dealt with any cubic equations before, but what is a common factor in all of these numbers right here? X, okay? So what we can do is we can take a factor of x out, and then that'll give us, in the brackets, x squared minus 7x plus 6, okay? And now we've got a quadratic equation which we can now factorize. So again, think of two numbers which can sum to make minus 7 and multiply to make positive 6. In that case, it will be negative 6 and negative 1, okay? So then we'll be left with x is outside the brackets, okay? And then we'll be left with x minus 6, x minus 1, okay? And that would be that question factorized, okay? How about something like this? With x to the power 4 minus y to the power of 4. So again, like some other previous questions, it is, once again, a difference of two squares, okay? Now, both x has the coefficient of 1 and y also has the coefficient of 1. But we have this to the 4 as well. So what that means is we would end up with x squared plus y squared, and that is x squared minus y squared as well, okay? So when you see questions like this, you've just got to realize it's a difference of two squares. You've just got to see it, okay? So right now with this question, we have 6x to the power of 3 minus 7x squared minus 5x, okay? And for this question, the first thing you've got to do is, even though it's a cubic equation, all of these values, they all have x in them, which means that we can take out a factor of x. So if we take out a factor of x, then we will get x, and then we will get 6x squared. We will get plus 7x minus 5, okay? And now we've got a quadratic equation. But the quadratic equation, it's a bit of a different one. In the past, we've been looking at quadratic equations where the coefficient of x squared was just 1, but now we have 6, okay? So what can we do here? Well, there's a method what we can do, and I'll teach it to you now. So first things first, what we can do is if we multiply 6 times the minus 5, we get minus 30, okay? And now with that minus 30, it's the same thing which we did in previous quadratic equations. We want to think of two numbers which can sum to make 7 and can multiply to make minus 30. So the quickest way is just to go through the factors of 30, see which ones have the potential to make a positive 7. In this case, 10 and 3, that sounds good, sounds about right. And then just make sure you get your signs the right way. So in this question, we have 10 and we have minus 3. And then what you do is you kind of split up this 7x. This becomes 10x. And this becomes minus 3x, okay? And then once you get that, now what we want to do is we now have this. So we have 6x squared minus 10x. And then we have a minus 3x minus 5, okay? And I'll do like a little line between just so we don't confuse them, okay? Now that we've got these two separate equations, now we want to factorize these individually, okay? So if we do that, if we factorize a 6x squared plus 10x, then we would get a 2. And then we also get x. And then inside the brackets, we would get a 3x. And we would get a positive 5. Okay, and then on this side, if we do the minus 3x minus 5, the only thing which we can take out is a minus. So effectively, it's like taking out a minus 1. And then inside the brackets, we also get a 3x plus 5. Okay, and now this is the stage you want to get at. If you get the same values inside the brackets, you know that you've done it correctly. So what that means is one of our brackets has to be 3x plus 5. And then for the other bracket, it's just all the values which are outside the brackets, okay? In this case, we have 2x, and we have a negative 1. And that would be the question, okay? So we factorize this now fully, but are we done yet? No, we're not done yet, because don't forget about this x. Do not forget this x we had at the start. So actually, the question would be x, 3x plus 5, and then 2x minus 1, okay? And that would be that question. So that will end 1.3, going over factorizing. I know you've done a bit of this in your GCSEs. This is more of a recap, and then later on when we get into harder questions, we need to use stuff like factorizing to help us with the answer. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. In our next video, we'll be going over 1.4, which is all about negative and fractional indices. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon.